Greetings and God bless. I want to talk about just hypocrisy. When I was growing up, there was like this story about like city mouse and church mouse, and it implied that the country mouse. I'm sorry, the city mouse and the country mouse, and it implied that the country mouse was ignorant and like inadequate, and so there and of course in American media, the people, the hillbillies, um, are are considered trash basically, and they're considered the worst of humanity, and they're portrayed in the like it's class warfare. That's what I'm realizing. This psyop. So people like hillbillies or whatever, the stereotype is not somebody, a city slicker with the fancy scarf and the manicured nails and the wingtip shoes or whatever. So successful, I'm so worldly. And the white trash, the hillbilly is like, I'm independent, I'm self-reliant, and I'm sure, human nature everywhere is like, look at me, I'm so great. So I'm sure that goes on everywhere in every class and echelon of society of all cultures. But the keeping up with the Joneses in the country is different than what's in the city, at least superficially. And again, when I think about it, it's class warfare, and that's what everything seems to be. I mean, of course, it's between good versus evil, up versus down. Are you going to heaven? Or are you going to hell? But there's, and I wonder if like class is actually the real determinant. And maybe what I mean by class is like your how much money do you make, and the leverage that you get in your social sphere from your economic status. This is just my thought on it. But over the past couple years, with what happened with the lockdowns and realizing how many people are bribed and blackmailed and brainwashed for their jobs, for their paycheck, they'll kill people. There are serial killers, serial pedophile enablers, serial pedophiles that are in important positions everywhere around the world, and and they're part of an organized system. So it's not just like merit based. It's not just nepotism. It's a system of evil, and then the programmers want you to become dependent on that money, on that leverage, on that power, on that lifestyle. and so it's not just like rich people. It's because these people aren't like wealthy on their own merit or whatever. It's they're slaves. It's type of human trafficking. I think when anybody's brainwashed, blackmailed, or bribed, it's human trafficking, in my opinion, because there's not free will. And the thing is about country people, about the hillbillies, about the homeless, is they're not in the system. They rejected the system. And so everything, whether you're a leftist or conservative, even a Christian, like nobody's seeking out the homeless people. And the irony is the leftist is all about the carbon footprint and living light on the land. You know who has a least carbon footprint? You know who's the least pedophile kind of a person because they'll be put away or killed? It's a homeless person. Yes, they're high on crack and they're selling their bodies and whatever, but they're not like the Epsteins and the people on the Epstein Island lists. Who's the Epstein people? It's the city selections. that he's banned in India because the injections killed people. The leftists are like, no, they'll staunchly defend people like Gates and the other globalists, even though you can send quotes like that guy Noel Harafi, who's like, humans are no longer going to be humans. Humans won't have a free will, um, and then they should be controlled by us. It's like they even tell you. So what what do we do with that? So there's this programming of the city mouse versus the country mouse. Is that right? And especially when the country mouse is the independent person who's opting out of the black the brainwashing, blackmailing, and bribing. And of course, in the country, that kind of thing happens. And folks are like, oh well, like city folks are like country folks are so backwards, and they have sex with their sisters and stuff like that. Oh, so that doesn't happen in the city? That doesn't happen amongst the elites? The elites just the city folks, the globalists just hide it better. The globalists just pay people off. So the evil that happens in the country, if they had enough money, it would be as secret as it is with the city folk. So the liberals have this like double standard, and I think it's like it's a type of crabs in the barrel kind of a thing. Like the city folk don't want anybody to escape to rugged individualism, to the country, like out of the matrix. And I think it's a type of discrimination. It's a type of racism, and it's classism as well. And that's what I noticed the left loves to do. The left loves to hate country people, hillbillies, homeless people, and people who aren't in their system. And, like 20 years ago, like even longer than that, like I was hearing about permaculture and sustainability, and it was an alternative thing, but now it's been co-opted by the globalists. And it was weird because like it was like 2005, I went to a talk by this permaculture guy, and he said, "Why should we let you live?" And there was something kind of mercenary about that comment. So I am thinking the globalists, and he was probably, working with them, like the globalists are asking that question: why should we let you live? And the leftists and the ignorant liberals are assuming that just because they're white, honestly, like that's the thing, is liberals are like, this anti-white rhetoric that's going on, or this anti-Jewish rhetoric, or whatever, this insane rhetoric, it's not going to affect me. The deaths by medical procedure, that's not going to affect me because I'm an upstanding person who pays high insurance and has a fine house and good career. They think that somehow their karma is going to protect them, or their liberal badges of whatever is going to protect them. And it's not. Like evil doesn't need you. Like evil doesn't need any of those liberal people, because we're in this paranormal situation. We're in this supernatural demon infested situation. And the leftists are like, well, and what we're finding with the leftist liberals is when a person of color or an LBGT person, a detransitioner, when anybody speaks against getting sex changes or pedophilia or the anti-white, anti-American agenda, when any of the supposed oppressed groups speak in defense of America and liberty and protecting children from sexualization and pedophilia, then the leftists use all the epithets they become the most racist, classist, that they are claiming the Republicans that console. They're the most sexist people. That's, I mean, the irony is the patriarchy in feminism today. Because the feminists of today are being patriarchal because they're insisting that men get to be in girls' spaces, women's private bathrooms and gyms and sports and prisons to rape them, to assault them, to psychologically torture them. So feminism is really rooted in patriarchy, like toxic patriarchy. Strangely, as bizarre as it is, and as is the toxic LGBT pedo community, because that's ultimate patriarchy where little children aren't safe from having to satisfy the sexual needs of a man. Like that's and that what cultures do that? What cultures are into adult men having sex with toddlers? Just look it up. Like, and the thing is, it's anti-Christian because the Bible says anybody that harms a child would, it would be better that he had a millstone wrapped around his neck, like tied around his neck and dumped into the sea. Like, there are special punishments for those who harm the children. And I would add those who enable those who harm the children, because that's the problem. Okay, so there's a pedophile, but there's all the enablers who turn a blind eye, who rationalize, who try to say, oh, the kid wants it. No, the kid wants to please the adult because the kid's trying to survive and doesn't know any better. A child is not an adult. A child does not have adult needs, and certainly not the one of a pedophile. And the pedophile is creating a pathology. But, the liberals are toxic patriarchs. Like they're doing toxic patriarchy. And they think they're being anti-patriarchy. They think they're being anti-conservative, whatever. But God says protect the children. Disfigure, maim, and cause the children to suffer and, be violent and sometimes kill themselves. So it's such, like, if only people would really look at things rather than just act in a knee-jerk reactionary kind of a way. And of course, that's why I think the injections were focused on older folks. I mean, of course, it's focused on children as this population control because they're trying to get rid of like 6 million people. And they say this. I mean, YouTube, AI, and the Big Brother folks, this is what the globalists say. This is what the World Economic Forums say, is that they is it the Committee of 300 or but they say that they want that the only way the earth can survive is with like only 1 million people. And the only reason why the globalists want 1 million people is because they still need to do human sacrifices. They still need to do rapes because the demons feed on the suffering of children. And so they need a pool, and then they need people to be their servants and sex slaves and whatever. So, and they need a strong genetic population. So 1 million people is probably good for that. And the truth that the leftists failed to tell us, the truth that the globalists failed to tell us, is that there's enough land, that Earth is bigger than we're told. Our countries are bigger than we're told. We have infinite resources, oil, water, and the Earth is capable of handling our presence, even our mistakes. I mean, if only it would be nice if the globalists weren't poisoning the food, air, water, and mines and electromagnetics, like the atmosphere around us, particularly in America. I feel like America is so targeted by the globalists. And it's because we are a culture of freedom, of true freedom. And it's a Christian freedom. It's not just like, oh, Amsterdam, where you can have sex and, do drugs and whatever. Because Amsterdam, with all that freedom, what kind of an impact? It's just where people go to buy drugs and go to prostitutes legally. That's what it's big about. It's not a world power. It used to be, but not because it had legalized drugs and prostitution. So, and the unfortunate, ignorant liberals are like, oh, if we do those things, everything's going to be great. Just look at Denver with the legalization of drugs past 10 or so years. It's a cesspool. And yeah, if you're in a gated community and you quickly walk from your parking spot to your office to work your project management job, it seems nice, and you go to the fine restaurants. But as you're walking from your office to that fine restaurant 3 blocks, you see all this, like this carnage of drug abuse and mental illness, untreated mental illness and homelessness, like Calcutta. So, like, legalizing everything isn't the answer, because like people are nutrient deprived and they're targeted by psychological operations and various toxins and whatever. So, if it was like 300 years ago and we had the same clean air and common sense and Christian influences, people could probably handle things a little bit better. It wouldn't be good. Like, it's not good when a husband sleeps around behind the wife, or it's not good when people have premarital sex. It's not good for a prostitute to have to do that for a job. She deserves a husband that loves her and protects her and supports her. But the way things are now, all just it's like, it's not good. Like, libertarians don't realize the many assaults that the human body is subjected to in America. And our decision making is impaired. It's impaired even if you're clean and sober and eating a healthy diet. So yeah, things are deeper than it seems. And am I the only one who's figuring this out? I think so, strangely enough. But this is just my opinion. This is my observation from when I was in college and doing research on sociology and women's studies and gender studies and stuff like that. So this has just always been in my mind since the late 80s. And the horrible thing is that consent is not the primary. Informed consent is irrelevant to the left. The left could care less about informed consent to little kids. Like, and it's weird because the left is like, we want to get immigrants here, so and take care of them. Like, why? Because they want the immigrants to vote. Like, it's traitors. I mean, that's what the left is. They are traitors to America because they're trying to take over this country by importing people who have the dregs of their countries. Sad to say, because the people who come here legally are the highest caliber of those countries. And I know this from firsthand experience growing up in New York in the 70s and 80s. Is you would have doctors and PhDs and whatever, driving cars, driving taxis, and working entry-level jobs. And so it just raised the caliber of ordinary life. And of course, there was just regular working class people, which also raises the caliber of life. When everybody's trying to like live up to some like meme of goodness or whatever, of political correctness, that is very empty. Like, there's that book, the Tao Te Ching, and the guy, the author, it's I forget, but He says when there's political correctness in a way, like when there's these rules of society, it's there because there's no natural morality. Political correctness is more of like this um, punishment method than integrity and inner growth kind of a thing. Uh, and so it's artifice. Political correctness, especially in this orthodox form that we find ourselves in now. It's June of 2024. So people are trying to live up to artifice rather than what's right, because what's right is you protect women. What's right is you protect children, and you don't go, oh well, I gotta worry about pedophiles' feelings or um, a rapist's feelings that he wants to identify as his victim, so that he can victimize more. I mean, and the thing is, these men who are claiming to be women are like they're mentally ill, because no one in their right mind. So let's say I identify as the president of the United States. Do I get to have the White House now? I should, because that's how I'm identifying. I identify as Klaus Schwab. I identify as Bill Gates. Bill Gates' estate is now mine because that's how I identify. Like if we're gonna take this to its full conclusion, that's inane, right? Like I identify as the owner of, you know, whatever, of Tesla or something like that. Oh, and the left would not support me because why? Because it's crazy. But they're going to support this orthodox, politically correct nonsense that jeopardizes the safety of women and children. And that's not what liberalism used to be. And liberalism has become toxic patriarchy. Like, I mean, the liberals are like toxic masculinity. Yeah, there is toxic masculinity, and that's something that needs to be dealt with in that person's family and friend and community sphere. And the fact that people ignored it, they didn't take care of it, and so then there's the backlash of people rejecting men and rejecting heterosexual lifestyle because they were abused by toxic masculinity, or even toxic women, because women can be just as patriarchal, and I think even more patriarchal than men. I think women can be more evil and traumatizing than men. Uh, they just are more cruel and malicious and malevolent than men. Uh, and men can be really bad, of course, clearly. But women have, I don't know what is up with the evil that women do. But so, there's a failure of conservatives and heterosexuals of the past that allowed toxic masculinity and allowed fathers to rape their children and uncles to do so, and priests and pastors, and you know just the Christian world and the conservative world. I mean, World War II, when Christians didn't didn't stand up against putting people away. So, and we're seeing that again, like, because the Christians just want to be left alone. They don't want to be persecuted, and they just want to be comfortable. And they're thinking that God will absolve them of any responsibility. And it can seem like the Bible's like, don't get involved, but I think that's immoral. Like when your countrymen are being hauled away and for unjust causes. Um, so and it was a variety of people. So, and who knows? Maybe I don't know the whole thing. Maybe I don't know. Because we do know that the victors write history, and that excuse me, and that history isn't what it seems. The more we look into it now. So, folks, pay attention, use your common sense, believe what your eyes are showing you, and humans are fallible. I don't think that's any excuse for what conservative men did or what enablers did when it was a heterosexual world. There's no excuse, but the thing is, the left is being just as bad as conservatives, because human nature is evil, and the reason why the West, for all its flaws with toxic masculinity, it still produced a lot of wonderful fruit, because even by atheists, but they were surrounded by Christians, and so you know Isaac Newton or Galileo or whatever, these folks may have been like esoteric and may have been involved in the occult or whatever, but their maids were Christians, their friends were Christian. Like, there was somebody who was a sincere Christian, that the indwelling of the Holy Spirit of that person was shining a light on the so-called person of greatness. I suspect the people of greatness of our past may actually be some type of archetype, some type of story, not even a real person, or the story is about a fiction. Like Shakespeare, every letter that we see of the name Shakespeare that's used in his books and stuff, like, that they took a bunch of different signatures, which were mostly incoherent, and they took the best letter out of like a dozen signatures, and they cobbled together the writing, the name, the signature that we see of Shakespeare today. So Shakespeare had a crappy handwriting, and that's not really like, it wasn't a high form level crappy handwriting, and I'm trained in handwriting analysis. So while it may not be who I think wrote those plays, I think it's by committee. I think every popular author, it's probably written by committee, like Stephen King or J.K. Rowling. Who knows, Isaac Asimov, perhaps. So I'm just saying, things are not as they seem. So maybe the Harry Potter stories is from 600 years ago, you know? Like, and I believe that what we're told is science fiction of today is really the science of the past. I think science fiction of today is the technology we used to have, and that the globalists stole and have hidden for themselves to use. And then we're set in the Stone Age. And I think, like, what's called primitive cultures, these are post-cataclysmic cultures that have just managed to survive after their technology, after their original culture was taken away. So, so I don't believe the narrative that we're told. I think there's some like bones that are um, trustworthy, but may not be accurate. Like, I believe in the U.S. Constitution. I believe in the Bible. Uh, and I don't know though. Was the U.S. Constitution made in the 700s? It was the 1700s. Like, all the major points in history is as accurate to the timeline, but I think we're, and the left needs to realize that it's being just as bad as conservatives. It's being more racist, more abusive, more patriarchal, jeopardizing women and children, jeopardizing the most vulnerable, and like and so malicious, so malevolent when people don't conform, you know? And the left, it's funded, it's heavily funded. And the thing is, conservatives do not fund their situation like the left funds. I heard that protesters get paid $1,000 for an 8-hour day at the universities, at the campuses. So, of course, you're going to have people showing up en masse, not knowing what the heck is going on, but they're going to collect $1,000 a day and then leave Tiffany boxes in the trash. Like, there's all this stuff that was left in the trash. Like, these people are rich kids, privileged, not suffering. I mean, they're suffering because they're sleeping on the grass in a tent, but they're paid $1,000. They're compensated. Like, nobody's forcing them to do it. So, yeah, this incredible, shameless hypocrisy of the left, and then claiming to be so noble, that they want vegan food and don't want anything like no bagels, because it's a stereotypical Jewish food, to harm Jewish people. Like, these people are the new people that were in Germany putting people in those camps. And the liberals see no problem with it now. Whereas, like, 7 months ago, before October 7th, they would have been their worst enemy. Like, liberals would have been like, "Oh, don't you say anything anti-Semitic." And then the next month, they're saying something anti-Semitic, and they see nothing wrong with it. So, we're in such, like, complex psychological, insane times. And it's going to get probably even more convoluted. I'm thinking like it's got to be like extraterrestrials. And somebody was saying that it's like the people who write for South Park. It's like the people who write for South Park are writing like global current events news. So, and the people from South Park were probably Freemasons, just like Matt Groening of The Simpsons is a Freemason. And like his original submission for The Simpsons was like this horrible human sacrifice, bloody thing, with Homer and Marge and whatever. So, we get all cozy and we attach all this affection to media or whatever, and they're into human sacrifice, like child torture. So whoever Hollywood or the system serves up to us is not in our best interests or in the best interests of society. But they're good at entertainment, They're good at hacking the human brain. And that's why they don't like the nonconformists, the people who are willing to live in poverty, the people who are willing to live in the country without all the amenities of the city, without the worldliness, the kinky stuff that you get to do in a city. So liberals, leftists, like, you think you are the rebel alliance, but you're the empire. You really are. So what do you guys think? Thanks for watching. God bless.